Man, never waste a good crisis. We have been through a lot over the past few months, but as a nation, 30 years into our democratic maturation, we have also been through a lot. And I think when we look at where we are at any moment in time, we should never lose sight of the time sequence of how far we've come and what's actually been going on around us. COVID has humbled us in so many ways and caused us to reflect in so many ways. It has exposed so many things about our lives and about our societies, about our economies. It has, and I think in some places, irrevocably, permanently changed us fundamentally, socio-culturally. Our behavioral norms, the way we receive each other. And I think there's opportunity in it. I don't see problems. As a development practitioner, I trained and conditioned myself not to see problems, but to seek the solutions in every kind of circumstance, even existential threats like SGBV. So what's happening in Namibia is not unique to us. It wasn't 30 years ago, and it's not today after COVID. If you look at the information that is available to us across the world, there is an extraordinary spike in SGBV. And it's because of the psyche of the people, it's our psychology. We've been so affected economically that the previous speakers have spoken to the drivers of what drives this. Many governments have locked down industries. Your favorite word, you've even made a song about it, prohibited. Alcohol and other kinds of substances that were used for leisure have not been available. And as a young person sitting at the decision-making table, but also having my own lived reality when I leave the office, when I go for a run, when I have to drive myself home, enter my house at night, or whatever it is that I need to do that would expose me to risk. I have this dual reality where I understand the challenges and the limitations of our governing systems, but I also understand the desperation and the vulnerability of being a young black female in Namibia today. It's a risky place to be in our country. So what are we doing about it? Looking at the solutions, we have to ask ourselves, what does the end look like? 30 years ago, we had these challenges. They are deeply entrenched cultural norms, behavioral norms. You've touched on them, patriarchy. But I think Patrick Sam hit it on the head. It is about the wholeness of the person. It is about the kind of Namibian man and woman that we are socializing, that we are culturalizing. Every society is built on pillars. There are 5 pillars that uphold a society. If any one of them is broken, you're going to have problems. We've talked that this is a symptom of underlying problems. The first pillar is the family. That is where you are socialized, that is where you are culturalized, and that is where you are given your values, your value system. In our old context, we would have methods for conflict resolution, for dispute settlement. There was always, I think in a marriage setup, I'm not married, but I've seen my parents and I've seen my uncles and aunts. There's always a figure that you can go to help you out when there's that kind of situation happening. And what is happening now is there seems to be an absence of that kind of support system in the communities. Let's admit, the people that you could go to for some kind of arbitration and mediation. Then the second pillar comes to the community, where you're coming from, because that is where you form your relational constellations. That is where certain behavioral norms are normalized. That is also where you get your role models. And we reproduce ourselves in the environments that we are coming from. The third pillar that you'll enter into if you are in a Namibian societal context is some kind of faith-based organization. And that is where you get values, morality, ethics, and those type of principles entrenched into you. The fourth pillar in a Namibian societal context is the education system. You'll sit in a classroom, you will receive information, you will formulate your worldviews, but you also get capacitated and you become empowered economically to become and to be a productive citizen. The fifth pillar is the umbrella. It's our constitution. It's the law. It's the judiciary. It's the protection, the defense, the upholding of our fundamental human rights. It's the state. The state has got three. You know, we've got government, we've got the legislature, we've got the judiciary. They work in unison, they're interdependent, but they're separate in power. So, what I have learned over the past 3 weeks is that there's an over-reliance on some pillars and an underperformance of other pillars of our society. And that's why things are broken. That is why we are dealing with symptoms and we're doing patchwork, is because we're not getting to the fundamental issues. And we're not going to win. I'm an optimist, a perpetual optimist, and my language is usually redemptive. Let me rather reframe. We will win this fight when we address the real issues that are driving it. So the cost and the burden currently is on the state to police, to administer justice, and to protect and to provide that is war, but survivor-centered services, survivor-centered support. That is the state. But that is not sustainable because the state is going to police itself into bankruptcy if we had to do it that way. Because the moment you leave, if there is an unresolved issue, you turn your back and the same issue recurs. So we really have to take a hybrid approach, but also a multi-dimensional approach to targeting this thing. You've talked about it. Economic is one of the main things. And there are powerful case studies of how we can use law, how we can use economic restructuring, economic empowerment, how important gender mainstreaming and inclusion in political, economic, and social strata is for a country to address SGBV. One case study is in Pakistan, where they used to have high divorce rates. Do you know that Namibia is among the top 5 divorce countries across the world? We are in the top strata. Of course, it has to do with the ratio of our population because we're so small. So I'm not talking about absolute figures, but I'm talking about the rate of divorce in our country is extraordinarily high. It talks to a problem. In Pakistan, they just addressed title deeds, the law of who owns the land. It used to be in the man's name, they put it on the woman's name. What that did for that nation is that you saw that divorce rates went down. You also saw that GBV rates went down because there's a relationship, as Auntie Beans talked, the power relations and the interdependence of a woman and a man who are married or cohabitating on the economic supply. So if we begin to empower women economically, but also empower men economically, because the moment you leave one behind, you're gonna have a problem. Then we may begin to at least address the conditions that allow for tolerance. If we're talking about zero tolerance, it means that we have to dismantle what is making people to tolerate that type of abuse. I said to you guys on social media, and you laughed at me, and you're still laughing at me. I said that I'm a fighter from within. I said I'm an activist from within, but it's true. And let me explain myself to you. If you're going to get involved in systems of governance, you go there because you want to form part of the solution. Auntie Margaret spoke about it to say that when representation is so important, Aya spoke about it. She says, and I can confirm it. When I go with the president to these summits of world leaders, the men and the women who are making the decisions for countries, for nations, for young people in Africa, 65% of us are under the age of 30 or 35. 65%. It is so important that you have representation in those rooms. When I'm saying representation, it's not about age. You don't need to see me to believe that there's a young person who represents me. It's about mindset. It's about understanding the issues. It's about being conversant with contemporary issues that affect young people. So representation in these systems of governance and politics is important. But when we put skin in the game and we go in there, we don't go in there to be an island. We need you. We need you to bring the issues to us, to explain to us the changes in our sociological context. This is what's happening today. And most of the time, you understand the issues better than the people who are not so close to the issues. So being an activist from within is activism is about drawing attention to an unhealthy state of affairs. It's about a cause. It's like pain in the human body. You need it. It's like criticism. It gives you to focus on an area that needs attention. And every vibrant, every healthy democracy needs a dose of activism. You need people to scrutinize so that they can hold elected leaders accountable, so that elected leaders can remain focused, so that they can execute, and so that they can account. We need activism in a democratic society. It is important.